Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I should have known better than to get in that car. When she slammed the trunk shut with a force that rattled the rearview mirror and barked, "Get in or stay home," I paused for a second longer than I usually would. Not because I was tired, not because I wasn't packed, but because somewhere in the pit of my gut, I could feel something was off. Not new, not sudden, just sharpened. Like a dull ache that had finally decided to stab. Still, I got in. Because that's what you do when you're still trying. When you tell yourself there's still something worth salvaging, even if you're the only one holding a hammer. I climbed into the passenger seat and tried to fake a smile. She didn't notice. She hadn't really looked at me in weeks. This trip was her idea, if you could even call it that. She'd suggested it like someone suggests cleaning out a garage. We should go upstate. Clear our heads. Or something. Delivered in that indifferent tone that made it sound more like a chore than a getaway. I took it anyway. Because when your marriage is hanging on by threads, even the scraps feel like lifelines. We were headed to some old rental cabin she found online. No cell service, no internet, no distractions. I was cautiously optimistic. A little scared too. Lately, she'd been cold. Distant. Not just physically, emotionally too. Conversations were reduced to logistics. Her touch, when it came, was lukewarm at best. We used to be fire. Now we were flickering pilot light. The silence in the car stretched. Not the good kind. Not comfortable. It was weighted. The kind where you feel like even breathing wrong might set something off. After about 20 minutes of driving, she finally broke it. "You always breathe like that when you're nervous," she said, smirking at her phone. I looked at her. Not because I had a good answer. Just to see if she was joking. She wasn't. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, trying not to sound defensive. She just shrugged, still scrolling. "Nothing. You just get weird when we're alone." That one landed. Not because it was harsh, but because it was honest. The silence returned. Heavier now. She turned up the music. Not a shared playlist. Something electronic, thumping, impersonal. Like I wasn't there. For the next hour, I stared out the window and tried not to spiral. But it was hard. My mind had been working overtime for weeks now, ever since I started noticing the late nights. The text alerts she swiped off her screen the second I walked in. The girls' nights that didn't match anyone's social media stories. The shift in the way she kissed me, if she bothered to at all. And yet, I still said yes to this trip. Because I needed to know. One way or another. We pulled into a gas station 2.5 hours in. Middle of nowhere. One of those ghost town stations with peeling paint, a busted vending machine, and a flickering open sign that looked like a dare. No cars. No people. Just pines and gravel and the kind of silence that hums in your ears. She parked with a jolt. Didn't turn the engine off. "I need a break," she muttered. "Stretch your legs or whatever." I stepped out, more out of confusion than agreement. The air was cooler than expected. Crisp. A little too quiet. I took 2 steps toward the convenience store, and then I heard the engine rev. I turned just in time to see her flick me a wave through the windshield. Then she leaned out the window, her voice cutting across the lot like a knife. "Have fun hitchhiking." Then she peeled out. Gravel sprayed my shins. I stumbled back as her tires screeched, the taillights disappearing into the blur of trees. Gone. Just like that. I stood there for a few seconds, frozen in place. No phone. She took it. Accident, or on purpose, I didn't know. No wallet. Left in the glove box. No signal out here anyway. Just me. A gas station that looked abandoned in daylight, and the echo of her words bouncing around in my head like some kind of sick joke. Have fun hitchhiking. That's what she thought I was now. A pathetic hitchhiker on the side of a road she'd long since left behind. A man who wouldn't dare stand up for himself. A man too weak to realize the game had been rigged long before we ever packed that suitcase. She didn't know what I knew. She didn't know I'd been watching. That I had already collected the evidence. That she was weeks too late if she thought this was the big betrayal. I stood there, staring down that empty road, my reflection staring back at me in the glass of the vending machine behind me. And then I smiled. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't even rage. It was clarity. She thinks she won. She thinks I'm stuck out here like a fool. She has no idea I've already drafted her ending. Because before this trip, while she was busy playing puppet master, I was preparing my scissors. And when I get back, when I walk through that front door, it won't be with flowers or apologies. It'll be with divorce papers. And a brand new set of locks. If I'm being honest, the signs were there long before that road trip. They always are. aren't they? You just don't want to see them. You excuse the shift in tone, the rolled eyes, the way she starts wearing perfume again for places that don't require it. You tell yourself it's stress, that you've been busy, that it's just a phase. But deep down, for me, it started small. Subtle things. The way she started locking her phone, not the basic swipe code, but full biometric security. The sudden habit of taking calls outside. That first time she came home late from a meeting and smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. She was slick, I'll give her that. No lipstick on collars, no scandalous texts I could just happen to see. She was smarter than that. Calculated. She didn't want to get caught. She wanted to get away with it. I confronted her once, early on, when I noticed a missed call from a number saved under Coach Lisa. We don't have kids. There was no coach. When I asked about it, she barely blinked. Oh, she said, setting down her wine. That's just a gym contact. Scheduling. You're being paranoid again. Again. That word hit harder than I expected. Not because she'd used it, but because she said it like it was a pattern. As if I was the problem. Like I'd always been the problem. That night, I stared at the ceiling while she slept soundly beside me. I remember looking at her and realizing I didn't recognize her anymore. Same face. Same voice. But something was missing. That unspoken thread between two people who choose each other every day. I didn't feel chosen. I felt tolerated. So I started watching. Not obsessively. Not all at once. Just quietly. Logically. Like a man trying to stop himself from going crazy. I checked our shared credit card statements. Noticed the spa days she never mentioned. A $200 dinner at a steakhouse I'd never been to. A gym membership charged twice. Once under her name, and again under someone named Kevin. I played it cool. Asked nothing. Gave her rope. And she used it. Eventually, I placed a small tracker under the passenger seat of her car. Legal? Maybe not. Morally justifiable? In my eyes, absolutely. That little piece of hardware told me more than any conversation ever did. Tuesday nights, she was supposed to be at yoga. Except yoga apparently had a new location, Kevin's condo. I sat there in my office one evening, watching the little GPS dot settle into a neighborhood across town. Then sit there. For hours. Same place, week after week. No gym. No yoga. No accountability. I remember staring at that blinking dot on the screen and feeling something inside me crack, not in anger. Not in heartbreak. It was cleaner than that. Colder. Like a surgeon deciding which part to cut out before it spreads. The next week, I added one more piece to the puzzle, a small camera tucked into the home office bookshelf, pointed toward the desk. The same desk where she sometimes took calls. Where she once spent 45 minutes giggling into her AirPods while I was making dinner. That footage showed her whispering sweet nothings to someone. I couldn't hear it, no audio, but her body language said everything. The smile she hadn't aimed at me in months. The soft touch to her own collarbone when she laughed. The way she bit her lip and tilted her head like a teenager on the phone with a crush. I didn't react. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I started gathering. Photos. Screen recordings of GPS logs. Copies of credit card bills. All of it tucked away in a private drive. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Because she still thought she had the upper hand. Still believed I was in the dark, too naive or too afraid to challenge her. She didn't know that I was simply building the stage. And every step she took, every lie she wrapped herself in, was just another nail in the floorboards. Then came the road trip suggestion. We should get away, she said one evening, totally out of the blue. That was the first real tell. She never wanted to get away with me anymore. Not unless it served her. And something about her tone that night felt rehearsed. Like a chess player offering a move they already knew you couldn't win against. I agreed without hesitation. Yeah, I said, masking my curiosity. I think we need it. She smiled then. That eerie smile. The kind that says you have no idea what I've got planned. But neither did she. Because while she was planning to leave me in the dust, I was preparing her finale. The new locks had already been ordered. The attorney had the papers ready and signed but dated. The last document I needed was the why. The proof. The moment. The final trigger that would turn this from suspicion into strategy. And funny enough, she gave it to me. In the most poetic way possible. By slamming that gas station into reverse, screaming, "Have fun hitchhiking," like a line in some third-rate movie. She wrote her own ending. All I had to do now was walk back into the house and turn the page. The trucker who picked me up had a faded veteran's cap and a voice like sandpaper. He didn't ask too many questions, just raised an eyebrow when I climbed in and said, "She left you, huh?" I gave a half smile and nodded. "Yep. Middle of nowhere." Said I should try hitchhiking. He didn't say anything for a while. Just drove. After an hour of winding roads and silence broken only by static-filled country music, he dropped me at a gas station on the edge of town. I thanked him, bought a burner phone and a bus ticket. It wasn't until I was sitting on that cracked vinyl seat with the engine rumbling beneath me that I finally exhaled. I didn't go home. Not yet. That would have been too easy. Too predictable. I wanted everything perfect before the moment she walked through that door again, smirking, smug, rehearsing some fake story about a breakdown or needing space. No. She was going to walk into ruin. So I headed to a friend's place, Lucas. Someone who knew how to keep a secret and had a home office I could use for a few hours without questions. I plugged in my encrypted drive, opened the folder, and reviewed everything again with a fresh set of eyes. Kevin. Mid-30s. Fitness trainer. Married, ironically. Based on the photos I'd collected, I doubt he knew she was, too. I had screen grabs of their text chains, thanks to the software I installed months back, synced to her desktop when she forgot to log out. Dozens of messages. No explicit photos, but the kind of flirtation that left no room for interpretation. There were phrases like, "I wish I could just fall asleep on your chest tonight." He's still clueless. It's almost sad. "I'll wear that thing you like next time." Next time. I scrolled to the photos. One of them holding hands at a farmer's market. Another, her laughing in Kevin's car, legs across his lap. A close-up selfie of them with a milkshake, the kind we used to split on Sundays. I wasn't shaken. I wasn't even bitter. I was documenting, filing, curating. This wasn't about making a scene. It was about precision. She had humiliated me publicly, left me stranded like some forgotten suitcase. But what she never understood was that humiliation in silence is more powerful than any screaming match could ever be. While she was still likely on her way back into town, texting her girlfriends for a laugh, or maybe spending the night at Kevin's place, I was busy orchestrating her reset. First stop, my attorney. Mr. Mendel. Sharp as a tack and already briefed. "I've got what you need," I said as I slid the drive across his polished oak desk. He raised an eyebrow. "This everything?" "Everything, and then some." He nodded, inserted the USB into his laptop, and clicked through the folder in silence. A low whistle escaped his lips at one of the images. "Well, she's not winning this one," he muttered. I didn't smile. Not yet. It wasn't done. I want the papers drafted. I want the house. I want the car. She gets what she came into this marriage with, and that's it. And if she contests? I looked him dead in the eye. She won't. Because the next stop was the house. Our house. By the time I got there, it was still empty. She hadn't come home yet. Probably assumed I was still out begging for rides in the woods or spending the night in a ditch. She hadn't even bothered to call. I slid my key into the lock, then paused. I took it out. Because in my hand, I had something better, a fresh set of keys and a brand new smart lock. Installed earlier that week while she was at the gym. I stepped inside and got to work. I took her essentials, just the basics, 3 outfits, shoes, her toothbrush, charger, and a few toiletries, and packed them into 2 garbage bags. Not out of spite. Just enough to live on until she figured out her next move. Then I printed a copy of the dissolution papers. Put them in a manila envelope with her name on it. Taped it to the inside of the front door. Beside it, I left a USB drive labeled, "Play Me First." It had a curated slideshow of everything I'd found. Nothing overly graphic, just enough to prove without question that this wasn't an overreaction. This was a reckoning. And just before I left the house again, I grabbed one final item, a pair of scissors. Her gym keycard. Snip. Right down the middle. I placed it gently on top of the envelope. A quiet, clean goodbye. Then I locked the door behind me twice and left. Not because I was afraid, but because I was finally in control. And when she got home, when she saw the bags, the lock that didn't respond, the folder that spelled out her entire downfall like a storybook, she'd realized the punchline wasn't have fun hitchhiking. The real joke? She left behind the man who stopped being a victim the moment she drove away. She came back around midnight. I was parked 3 houses down, engine off, lights dimmed, watching from behind my windshield like a man watching a fire he already set. Her headlights curved into the driveway like nothing had happened. She didn't even hesitate. No panicked texts. No calls. No concern for whether I made it out of that roadside ghost town alive. That was the final confirmation I didn't need, but appreciated anyway. She got out of the car, popped the trunk, and pulled out a small bag. Casual. Like she'd gone on a Target run, not abandoned her husband in the wilderness. She didn't even check her phone. Probably assumed I was still out there, curled up on a bench, hitching rides. Or worse, begging her to take me back. She walked up to the front door, fished around in her purse, then paused. Tried the key once. Twice. Tilted her head. Then I saw it. The first crack. Confusion. She knocked. Not a gentle tap. A full-fisted knock that echoed down the block. I stayed put. Seconds later, her phone lit up in her hand. She hesitated. Dialed. Blocked. She knocked again, harder this time. Then finally noticed the envelope taped to the door. Even from where I sat, I could see the shift in her shoulders as she pulled it free and opened it. That's when her hand dropped to her side. She stared down at the papers, then at the USB drive clipped inside. The cut keycard fell into her palm. She turned it over once, twice, and I knew the moment it clicked. She stepped back from the door slowly, like it might bite her. The envelope was heavy. Legally, emotionally. It didn't just hold her new reality. It held her reflection. Everything she thought she'd gotten away with, everything she thought I'd never figure out, was right there in her hands. I watched her eyes dart across the lawn like she thought someone was filming this. Which, to be fair, wasn't that far off. Then she pulled out her phone again and called. I let it ring. Then I answered. Calm. Crisp. Hi. She blinked like she wasn't expecting me to pick up. You changed the locks? I did. What the hell is this? Her voice was rising now. That mix of fake outrage and real fear. That's called a dissolution of marriage. You might want to read it carefully before you start yelling. Is this a joke? I didn't answer. Let the silence do the talking. I just left you for a few hours. What? You're going to throw everything away over that? And there it was. Her version of the truth. I took a slow breath. I left the USB in the envelope. Watch it. There was a pause. She knew better than to argue. Her hand was shaking now as she unlocked her car, got inside, and presumably played the file. I imagined her face as each photo flashed across the screen. The cafe meetups. The GPS trails. The messages she thought she deleted. The shot of her hand in Kevin's lap. The messages where she called me boring. Predictable. Her emotional purse holder. I didn't need to embellish. The truth was humiliating enough. 5 minutes later, she called again. This time, her voice was small. I didn't think you. I know. I didn't mean for it to go that far. But it did. I was angry, she said, grasping for straws now. You stopped trying. No, I said evenly. I stopped tolerating. More silence. Then finally, the question she never thought she'd have to ask me. What happens now? I leaned back in the seat, exhaled through my nose, and said the words I'd been waiting to say since the moment she sped off at that gas station. You start over. And me? You start from nothing. Click. I ended the call before she could say another word. Then I started the car, pulled out slowly, and drove right past the house. She saw me, standing on the lawn with her hair a mess, her confidence gutted, her life unraveling in real time. She opened her mouth, but I didn't stop. Just gave her a polite nod as I passed. It wasn't rage that drove me that night. It wasn't even revenge. It was clarity. The kind you only get when someone shows you exactly who they are, and you finally decide to believe them. She left me stranded. She thought I'd crawl back. Instead, I came home with proof. And I left her with everything she deserved. I didn't hear from her for 2 full days. Not a call, not a text, not a single knock at the door. When she finally showed up at my office with her makeup half done and eyes red like she hadn't slept in 48 hours, I didn't even stand. I didn't sign it, she said softly, holding the envelope like it might burn her hands. I know. You really want to throw everything away? I looked her straight in the eyes. I'm not throwing it away. I'm returning what doesn't belong to me. She blinked, caught off guard. I made a mistake. No, I interrupted. You made a series of decisions. You had a routine, a schedule. Loyalty wasn't a switch you flipped off one night. You disconnected a long time ago. I just didn't want to believe it. She lowered her gaze, swallowing whatever excuse she was preparing. I gave you chances, I said, quieter now. More than I should have. And you gave me a punchline. Her fingers gripped the edge of the envelope tighter. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it, she whispered. That's what you always thought, isn't it? I said. That I'd always be there. That I'd tolerate the distance, the disrespect, the gaslighting. You thought I'd be too weak to leave. She didn't deny it. She just stood there, caught in the silence of her own unraveling. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just waited. And after a few seconds, she turned, clutching the dissolution papers like a warning label she'd never bothered to read. I never saw her again after that. We finalized the divorce in under 2 weeks. She didn't contest a thing. The house stayed mine. The car. The accounts. She walked away with the same thing she walked in, with an inflated sense of superiority, and now, the burden of her own mess. Kevin? He disappeared the second she told him she was married. He ghosted her so fast she didn't even get a parting emoji. I almost pitied her. Almost. But I'd run out of room for pity. I was done living on emotional credit. But there was another path I could have taken. If I had confronted her that day in the woods, at that gas station, if I had chased after the car, screamed, begged, thrown a scene like some desperate fool, she would have turned it into my fault. She would have twisted the story into emotional instability, told her friends I was controlling, maybe even filmed it. And suddenly, I'm not the husband who was betrayed. I'm the unstable guy who got left behind for a reason. She'd cry in front of her friends, paint herself as the victim. And I'd be the man on the defensive without a shred of proof. Sometimes silence isn't cowardice. It's strategy. And I've often imagined a different outcome, one where I forgave her, where I took her back, let her cry in my arms and spin her justifications until they sounded almost human, where I let the loneliness in my chest cloud my judgment, and I told myself it was a second chance. We would have sat across from each other at breakfast a week later, pretending nothing happened, except now I'd be living with a woman I didn't trust, eating eggs made by a liar, and dying slowly in a marriage where I was just a backup plan with a mortgage. And eventually, she would have done it again. Only next time, she would have been smarter, more careful, more cruel. Because nothing empowers a cheater like getting away with it. No, I'm glad I walked. I'm glad I let her pack her own narrative and drive off into her new beginning. Because when she turned around, what she found wasn't the man she mocked or manipulated. She found a man who had finally remembered his worth. A man who didn't scream. He locked the door and handed her the truth on paper. The final word wasn't loud. It was permanent.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.